Usually right after a break, the speaker has to be good because we'll be wanting to fall asleep. And the next speaker I've gotten to know over the last couple of days, you won't be falling asleep. His name's Rajiv Patel, and he's going to talk about how to provide a human touch in your online community. Rajiv is a manager of Salesforce Partner Community. In April 2014, he helped launch the first ever partner community at Salesforce with a focus on high-level engagement and success. In 4 years, Rajiv's team was able to grow the partner community site from 700 to 80,000 worldwide users. Impressive. He lives in the Bay Area and loves to practice yoga in his free time. Let's give it up for Rajiv Patel. Standing ovation. Woo!
All right. Thank you. Just see a quick show of hands. How many community managers do we have in the audience? Can we give ourselves a round of applause? It is not easy being a community manager, okay? You know, when I first started my career in community, I'm sure as many of you, I thought I was one of the only community professionals out there. I was like, community has its own space. And so, as I progressed through my career, I faced many different challenges. I would ask myself questions like, how do I grow the community? How do I engage the community? What are the best ways to do that? Or how do I measure success? Have any of you asked yourself that question before? Yep. But one of the biggest challenges that I faced was really being able to provide a human touch to the online community, really making our users feel like they were interacting with a human and not a robot. And I dealt with it, many of my colleagues dealt with it. When I looked at other communities in the community I manage, folks weren't talking to each other. But what I want to share with you all today is some tips that you can use, and I hope that are helpful, to really provide a more human experience in your online community. But first, I wanted to kind of take a step back and provide some context. If you think about it, over the last 300 years, we've seen incredible innovation and so much technological change. And today we're living in the fourth industrial revolution where artificial intelligence, IoT, robotics, they're really transforming the customer experience. And so our users today, the members of your community, they really want a unique and personalized experience. They want to build a strong relationship with you. They want a meaningful connection. And in doing some research, 63% of consumers, they're going to switch brands if they receive an inconsistent experience. And so your users, they really want that seamless, consistent experience. And as I just mentioned, they really want to be able to build a strong relationship with you. But sometimes we as community managers, again, myself included, we can tend to sound robotic and scripted. Kind of like, you feel like you have to talk a certain way, that you have to follow a script when you're interacting with your users. And I was having dinner the other night, and Beth, right up front from Bevy, I told her about the topic of my talk, and it made her think about this Friends episode. Does anyone watch Friends? Do you all remember the episode where Phoebe signs up as a telemarketer, and I think she's selling toner, and she's instructed to follow a script when she's interacting with prospective customers. And so I thought that was funny, but we tend to sound robotic and scripted. So that's one scenario. In other situations, we might not even respond. I've definitely dealt with this, and it's not intentional. Sometimes we might not know the answer. We might be too scared to reply. We might not be sure what to say, and so we won't respond. And so the question that I'm asking myself is, and that we should all ask ourselves, is how can we be more human online? What's the best way to do that? So I wanted to share some real ways, some strategies that you guys can all leverage to really provide a human touch online. And the first one is, of course, saying hello to new community members. When your members join your community, you want to give them a warm welcome. And there's a few different things you could do. Of course, provide them a welcome package. Maybe it's a response you give that says, hey, these are the top resources that you should use in this community. These are the right people to talk to. Really giving them a warm welcome and making sure that they're comfortable as they join your community. Encouraging them to fill out their profile. Get to know who they are. Encourage them to upload their profile picture. Remember, they want to be able to build a strong relationship with you, and you want to encourage them to do those things. Of course, learning about them is good, but of course, you want to be able to provide a tour of your online community. It's not always easy to navigate a community for members that just join, and so it's good to provide a tour for them, show them the lay of the land, where things are, again, who the right people to talk to are, and you could do this in a few different ways. One of those ways could be through doing a monthly webinar. Maybe it's a monthly onboarding webinar that you do with your users that says, hey, this is the community, this is where that is, this is where these resources are. Or, if users aren't able to attend that webinar, you could record that content and you could provide it back onto the community. And that's a really good way to scale that content, because I'm sure, as many of you know, it's really hard to get people all together at one time and at one place, and so it's really good to provide that content back in your community. The next tip I'd like to share is developing role-based learning paths. So what do I mean by that? For users that join your community, they might fit a specific persona or role. And so based off that persona or role, you want to be able to create a prescriptive learning path for them to follow. It's kind of like, you just joined the community. What are the steps that I need to do if maybe I'm a developer, maybe I'm a salesperson, maybe I'm a marketer? What are those prescriptive steps that I should follow to really be successful in the community? And so I'll just give you a quick example of a role-based learning path. This is just an example I put together. I took the role of a business user. And when I say business user, I mean someone who maybe who's new to the community and wants to know where things are and how to get started. And so you can see the steps laid out here. The way you might produce this content, it might be through a CMS. If you're using a content management system, this could be a static content page you put in your community. You'll see a few steps that I included. But as you can see, it's all about, just join the community. Take this training. Follow this communication group, review the calendar. Very clear steps that someone in the business user role would follow to get started with the community. Take your members on a one-to-one email journey. So I talked about the role-based learning path. Again, that could be a static content page that you publish in your community. But when I say one-to-one email journey, these are targeted outbound communications that your users can sign up through email. And it's a great way to push out a number of different content to them via email. And so I talked about the learning paths. You could also push out onboarding steps. Maybe it's milestones that they need to reach. News articles, blogs of best practices. Maybe you host live office hour programs, webinars. Maybe there's some upcoming events, meetups going on. Again, these are targeted outbound communications that your users can sign up for via email and receive those communications through email. And what I'll mention here, it's good to engage in the online community, and I'll talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. But again, this is all about receiving those communications via email. All right. Keeping your members engaged in the community. I talked about those outbound communications, but when your users join your online community, you want to make sure they're updated with the latest and greatest. I've learned that, when managing a community, when managing groups or forums in a community, you always want to push out the latest information. You want to make sure your community knows that this is a community on the move. There's always something happening. And so what I encourage you to do is to create one single communications group. You can call it whatever you want, whether it's like official communications group, official community group, and that's the group that you'll use to push out all important information, whether it's a product webinar maybe, an upcoming event, maybe it's a newsletter that you want to push out. It's a way to keep your users informed of what's happening on a very frequent basis. And what I'd also recommend that you do is that you limit to the post to the folks on your team maybe. Because if you just open it up to anyone in the community, it'll just get flooded with a number of different posts, and it'll lose its purpose. But again, a great way to keep your users very informed and very engaged. All right, addressing your community's questions. Who here manages a community where your users have questions? Yep. So it's very important to address your community's questions. And you could do that in a number of different ways. And one of the ways that I'd recommend, and this is something that my team does, is hosting a weekly office hours program. So my team will get on a call, we'll invite users to join or members to join, and we'll say, hey, do you have any questions? We'll walk them through the latest updates. But the purpose is to give them time to talk with real people, folks like myself, around any questions or issues that they may be dealing with. So that's a weekly program. The next recommendation that I have is to start a group in your community. It could be a question and answers group where any user can really post their question there. It could be just a general partner question, a general user question group. And what my team will usually do in the group that we have in our community is we'll monitor the posts that come in, we'll monitor the questions that come in, and what we'll do is we might direct users to a resource to learn more. We might direct them to a specific expert, or we might need to do some research and investigate the issue. But again, the idea is that we're providing our users with a space to post their questions and issues. And with that, you'll get a lot of happy users in your community. All right, bringing your community to the party. To me, it's very important to, of course, engage your users, but let them know all the excitement, everything that's happening, everything that you're bringing to the table. And so there are different ways you could really keep your community engaged and make sure that they're really excited to be a part of your community. You could ask them to speak on a webinar, an in-person event. Maybe they have some best practices to share with the broader community. Maybe they're an expert in a certain area, and they want to share that knowledge with other folks in the community. Encouraging them to build content. Maybe they want to put together a blog of best practices. Maybe there's an awesome PowerPoint presentation that they put together that, again, they want to share with the broader community. Encourage them to do that. And what I would say to those 2 points is, it's good to have users build content for the community, to share their knowledge on webinars, in-person events, but I would definitely recommend to create a process around that. And what I mean by that is, being able to vet that content, making sure it's accurate so that it's the right content to be pushing out to the broader community. You should, of course, invite members to your events. At Salesforce, we host a lot of free events, and for the community that I manage, there are member-specific events that we host. And so it's always good just to make sure that your users are invited to those events and that you're communicating those events to your users. And lastly, evangelize the members that are extremely engaged. I've heard a lot at this conference about, brand ambassador programs. I know that, Brian, he's from Encino. They run a champions program there. And so you want to be able to evangelize the members that are extremely engaged, because those are the folks that are going to be shouting from the rooftops. They're going to be talking about your community. And you want to make sure that you show that, hey, these are the folks that are really engaged in the community. All right. Listen, listen, listen. It's very important to listen to your community. And so, for the communities that you manage, they're going to have a lot of feedback. They're going to have thoughts about the community. They're going to want to share, how to evolve programs, processes. And so there's a number of different ways you could take in their feedback. You could start a focus group with selected members. Maybe you choose members based off their personas or their roles. Again, a great way to gather that feedback. You could develop a survey. Maybe you put out an annual survey out on the community just to ask users like, hey, what should we be doing differently? How can we improve the community? How can we improve our programs, our processes? And if you really want users to really be able to take that survey, maybe you offer an incentive. If you take this survey, you'll be entered in a raffle to win maybe like a Sonos speaker or something like that. A great way to get them to take that survey. You could poll the community. Maybe you offer a quick poll and say, hey, out of these 4 features, which one would you like to see implemented in the community in the next year? It's always good to reach out to individual members directly, get that one-on-one time with them. And then lastly, what I'd recommend that you do, and this is something that my team does, is you create an open group for members to share that feedback. The group that we use, we call it Suggestion Box, and any user in our community can post their thoughts there, their feedback, and then what my team will do is we'll take in that feedback, we'll share with the broader team, and see how we can incorporate that feedback into the community. All right, so the last tip that I'd like to share with all of you today. So as you all are building your community, you're growing your community, it is so important to be able to maintain strong relationships with the community. And that can be super difficult, especially as it grows, as it scales. And so, what I'd recommend that you do, what I would encourage you to do, one of the ways you could really maintain those strong relationships is by building an expert engagement model. And what I mean by that is, and this is something that we did, as we kind of progressed through our community as it continued to grow, what we did is we partnered with different individuals at our company to engage with our users through the community. And these are experts across Salesforce. What my team would do is we'd work internally. We'd create kind of like a pitch deck around the community, let them know the value of the community and how they could play a part in it. And we said, hey, you could manage your business through this community. And so we've partnered now with over 100 experts, over 100 Salesforce experts that are engaging with our users through the community. And so that's one way you could do that. Okay, so I just wanted to end on a quote. This is from my former manager, John Richter. And he said, when you answer an email, you've helped one member. But when you post an answer in the community, you've helped all members. If you think about it, yeah, you could just email someone and respond to their question through email. But when you post an answer on a community, you've really helped all members. There might be other users in the community that had that same question. And by posting the answer there, you were able to help all those other members. And so with that, I just wanted to say I appreciate all of you. I was talking with Brian and Tom the other day, and this stuff is not easy. These things take time, and so it's almost as if you have to create a culture where it's okay to post stuff in the community, share information, and at one point, things will click, and the community would service itself on its own. So thank you all, and I hope we can stay connected.